Welcome to KAJ Politics Live, the show where politics meets clarity. Here we go beyond headlines to provide context, insight, and perspective on the forces shaping power today. And today we have with us Zolal Habibi, Iranian human rights activist, a prominent voice for justice, democracy, and women's rights in Iran. And she serves on the Foreign Affairs Committee of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, where she advocates globally for a free, secular, and democratic Iran. So we'll be talking about the present protest movement, the regime's strategies for survival, the vision and role of organized opposition groups, and now how international actors like the US are influencing the calculus. Welcome to the show, Zola.
Thank you very much for having me, and I would like to greet all the viewers who are listeners who are tuning in. Thank you.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Zolal. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will understand about what's happening down there in Iran and understand about the issues surrounding it from you. So, Zolal, but before that, let's understand a bit about your background, your journey, your story, so that people know who they are listening to.
I have been with the Iranian resistance now for 26 years, going on 27. I am from the generation that unfortunately has seen nothing but the current dictatorship in Iran. I was born after the revolution to parents who were activists. My father was a prominent writer and a human rights activist, so I became aware of the human rights situation in Iran from very early on. But also from childhood, I learned that the Iranian regime sees no borders when it comes to its atrocities, and that it will do anything to keep itself afloat and in power. My father was killed by the regime in summer of 1988. That summer, the Iranian regime had 30,000 political prisoners executed. And what we are seeing today on the streets of Iran is the largest killings and a massacre really since 1988. So if we want to understand the current situation on the ground, we can say there have been 3 waves of massacres in Iran since 1979 till today. One was 1981, one was 1988, and one is today, what we're witnessing today. So for me, this is a very good time. And for me, it's really important to be able to echo the voice of the Iranian people in this critical time, and to make sure that maybe we can help another generation not have to suffer and to actually see the freedom that we've all been yearning for. I have I've actually unfortunately never been to Iran. I have been to India before, but I have not been to Iran yet. I hope that soon we will be able to see a free Iran, and we will be able to invite everyone to come and see the beautiful country that we do have, that unfortunately has been in the shackles of dictatorship for over 100 years right now.
Absolutely, Zola. So to understand it better, if I understand, you are in the US or any other part of the world, and you are not in Iran, for the understanding of the audience?
Yes, I am. I was born and raised in the US, but I am currently in France, in Paris.
Absolutely. So to understand this, there have been always several rounds of, some protest one time or the other. And this time it's gaining a lot of momentum. It's a different time in our history, with so much of, possibilities of dissemination of information. Though news is that, a lot of internet and telephone have been disrupted. Amidst all these things, how should we understand the present round of protests, and what makes you so positive about that change is just round the corner? Because latest reports are showing that Mr. Trump seems to be agreeable to what the Iran administration is saying about, not going further in terms of curbing protesters or protests. I want to understand from that point in view, Zolal.
Yes, well, I think you just asked a few questions together, so I'll try to answer each one separately. Well, what sets these protests apart from the previous, and the fact that we have seen demonstrations and protests in Iran, especially in the last decade in Iran. If you look, I think you could see the evolution of these demonstrations in Iran. So the first major demonstration was, as I said, 1981, and then with the 1988 massacre, the regime spread complete fear in society for a whole decade. And again, the first time we saw protests form in Iran was summer of 1999, which was the student uprisings. Then a decade passed, and we had the 2009 protest after the so-called elections in Iran, which people use that as a excuse to be able to voice their dismay with the regime. And then we had 2017, 2019, and 2022 uprisings and protests. Each time, if you look, each time it has created a point of no return for the regime. Each time something has been engraved or enshrined in the society. So step by step, you see it moving forward. And after, the reality is after the uprisings in 2019, which 1,500 people were killed in 3 days. At that time, the regime shut down the internet for 5 days, and they were able to carry out a massacre, and that was what stopped the demonstrations at that point. After that, the regime has known that the next uprising can mean its complete overthrow. Unfortunately, COVID bought time for the Iranian regime, because during COVID, that's why the Iranian regime refused to even bring in medical aid or vaccines, because they were happy that people were in their houses and they couldn't come out to protest or continue those their dismay with the regime. 2022, the world saw that the people came out after the tragic death of the tragic killing of Mahsa Amini because of her hijab, and we saw a whole movement grow. But what's important right now, and what the distinct difference that this time the uprising has, first of all, it started with the economic crisis in Iran. The economic crisis in Iran is something that the regime has no power to fix. It has reached a point that the regime really can't do anything about it. So it's not like the previous times that they were able to give it something to be able to keep people quiet a bit, give in somewhere, or they don't have that possibility right now. But what was important is that it started from the bazaar. The bazaar has always had a very important historic role. In 1979 or 1978, when the bazaar joined the revolution, that was a turning point in the overthrow of the Shah too. And so when the bazaar joined, what was important was that the student movements also joined, the universities joined. And so it spread throughout the country. Immediately within the first few hours, the slogans went from targeting the economic situation to targeting the entirety of the regime, with their slogans of "Down with Khamenei," "Down with dictator," "Down with the oppressor," be it the Shah or the mullahs. So people wanted to give their distinct message that we want to see an end to this regime. We want to move forward in the 21st century, because most of those who we see on the streets, we see people from all walks of life and from all age ranges, but the majority are Gen Z. And this Gen Z, they want to put an end to all of these, unfortunately, the current and the past dictatorship that we've had. They want to move forward to have, a people's sovereignty. They want to see a secular democratic republic in Iran. So that is the message that they're trying to push forward, and that's what they're aiming for. I think one of the distinct characteristics of this uprising is the fact that we see organizational structure on the ground between these rebellious youth and the resistance units who are working on the ground. And that is what has kept the protests going, despite the brutal crackdown and the bloodbath that the regime has started in this massacre that we're witnessing. The protests are still continuing. And that is, I think, very key and very important. And then we also see the ambition that people have, the inspiration that people have. Everyone says that you see the hope in people's eyes. And that's why you see also, because they are becoming more organized, because they are working together, standing shoulder to shoulder, they support one another. You see that they've gone on the offensive. They're the ones who are disarming the suppressive forces. They are targeting centers of repression, and they are moving forward. So that is, I think, a important significance. And that, I think, here is the signature and the main impact of resistance units that have been formed by the Iranian resistance, by the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran for the last decade in Iran, and it's grown. And now we are seeing its how it has evolved and how it's making impact on the ground in the protests.
Absolutely, absolutely, Zolal. So, to understand it better, amongst the protests and slogans, there are also slogans and banners and posters against the US. So, I want to understand that is it an internal matter of Iran, or is it an external matter also? Because the US seems to be making a lot of, declarations and egging on protesters, and that help is coming soon, and different posturings are happening. I want to understand it from you. What sort of way that you look at it? Is it internal, or do you expect some external help here?
Well, I think, first of all, just to explain, a lot of those videos or things that you're saying that maybe they're against the United States, those are, the regime is creating anti-protest protests. So these protests are to be against those who are protesting. So that's not the actual people, that's like the regime's propaganda machine. But the reality is that you have to understand the people of Iran have nothing against any other country. They just want to see the overthrow of the regime. What we have learned from our history, we have a saying in Farsi: no one's going to scratch your back except your own finger. You have to pay the price for freedom. No one's going to hand you freedom in a silver platter. Unfortunately, countries, entities, they have their own interests, and that's understandable. But what's really important is how we deal with that. And so for the Iranian people, they may, they want a firm policy on Iran. We have reiterated, as Mrs. Rajavi, Mariam Rajavi, the president-elect of the Iranian resistance for the interim government, has stated from 20 years ago, not today, from 20 years ago, she stated that the Iranian people will have a clear message, and that is that we are not stuck between two choices of policy of appeasement or war. There is a third option on Iran, and that's supporting the Iranian people and their organized resistance to create change. Unfortunately, till now, there's been a policy of appeasement. And unfortunately, the people of Iran have paid the price for the policy of appeasement, because they've been used as the bargaining chips every single time at the negotiation tables. But right now, what we are asking for is, we're not asking for troops on the ground, the Iranian people, because we have, first of all, we understand Iran's geography. It's not Iraq, it's not Afghanistan, it's not Libya. Iran is a very vast country with a different structure. And the reality is that we also have historically seen foreign intervention. I mean, the only democratic government that we've actually had was Dr. Mossadegh, who was taken out with a coup d'etat by the CIA and MI6. So the Iranian people know that how important it is to keep your independence, to be able to form that actual democracy in Iran. Because if you look in our history, Reza Shah was brought in by the British, then he was taken out. And then Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was brought in by the US and the UK, and then he was taken out. And then Khomeini was brought in with the agreement of Western powers that they made that decision in Guadeloupe to have Khomeini come in because there was the Cold War then. USSR is bordering Iran, so they wanted, someone who they thought would stand in front of the communist USSR at the time. And so the Iranian people have paid the price. Those who actually created the revolution were still in the prisons when Khomeini came into power. So they were the last group of political prisoners were released on January 20th, 1979. And then 12 days later, Khomeini arrived in Tehran, but those decisions had been made beforehand. So the people who had actually created the revolution, the ones who had given the blood, the ones who had suffered the torture, were once again suppressed later by Khomeini and became the first victims of Khomeini's regime. 120,000 people have been executed in Iran under the mullahs for supporting the Iranian resistance movement, the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran. So that is that background. So that's why the people of Iran, they're not looking at outside influence. They know that they have to create the change themselves, and they know that the price is not going to, the price is going to be high. As I said, no one's going to hand us freedom in a silver platter. Unfortunately, the price is being paid by those brave youth, rebellious youth who are standing in the streets. Right now, among the lists, when you look through the ones that we've been able to verify their names, you see a lot of teenagers and their 15, 14-year-olds who are being killed in these protests. But despite knowing the risk, people are going to the streets. And I think in the past few days, there's been the internet shut down. So it's been very difficult to receive media files from inside of Iran. But in the past 2 days, now 48 hours, there has been some telephone connections reconnected. Unfortunately, you still can't call Iran, but people can call you sometimes. The calls are very short. Sometimes they're 1-2 minutes, then they get cut off. But people are giving one message. They're like, the situation is devastating. Please draw attention to the massacre. But we are continuing. The protests have not stopped. People are still in the streets every night. People are still protesting, and they're moving forward. This is the final push. We need to make sure that we continue until we see the dawn of freedom in Iran. And that is the message coming from inside of Iran. And that is what they would like to convey to the international community. And also in regards to the solution for Iran. Again, here, there's also a third option here. The people of Iran are not stuck choosing between the current dictatorship, which is a religious dictatorship. It's a misogynist regime that has committed crimes unimaginable in the last 47 years. But they're not stuck choosing between this and going back to the previous dictatorship, which was the Shah's monarchy and his Savak and one-party rule. They want to move forward. There is a third option here too. It's moving forward to a secular democratic republic. And that has been outlined by the National Council of Resistance of Iran. The thing is that today we have organized resistance on the ground and in the scene. And I think what's important is that they have shown what they stand for and their values and principles, not in just mere words or on paper, but in action. People have seen it for over 40 years, that the price that they have paid and what they are doing. And also there's a concrete roadmap, plans, like there's the 10-point plan of Mrs. Rajavi, which is a overview of the actually interim government's plan presented by the National Council of Resistance of Iran. It calls for free elections and that the ballot box is the final criterion. It calls for freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, all the basic freedoms that people in Iran have been denied for so long. It calls for the abolition of the death penalty and execution and torture, and for all suppressive forces to be dismantled and disarmed, and just removed, eradicated. It calls for separation of church and state, or religion and state. It calls for equality between men and women, and gender equality, and for women to be given equal opportunities. It calls for autonomy of the ethnic regions like Kurdistan and whatnot. It calls for taking away all the double standards and the biases that exist currently in this regard. It calls for a independent judiciary and rule of law. It calls for a non-nuclear Iran, and also it calls for the preservation of the environment and free market economy, equal opportunities for everyone. So it's it's 10 points, but those 10 points, they have been called Jeffersonian. They have been called, it's a true roadmap that we can move forward with. And it's something that I think you could put it on any table and just discuss it. If you do, what part of this plan do you not agree with? And that is what can create that unity that's needed to move forward.
Absolutely. I like these points, but it almost sounds utopian from at this point in time. Though I would love it to see it that way, seeing the aspirations of so many people. Do you think the world outside has a lot of misconceptions about the protests, also about the alternatives? Because reports are also coming, US officials are meeting Pahlavi, and then again, so people are getting different sort of messaging here. I don't know whether that much is controlled, and if that is going to be thrust, if at all there is any change. I want to understand it from you again then. Should it remain, the choice should remain with Iranian people, or should the choice be external just because somebody is going to help you?
As I said, that is why we think that it's so important to keep our independence, because we don't want, the minute that you're dependent on a foreign entity, you have to address their interests. And that is something that we've already paid a grave price for. We don't want that repeated. So that's why the people of Iran are saying, look, we're willing to pay the price on the ground, but please let us recognize our right to resist against the mullahs and this regime and its brutalities. But I think what is really important, as you said, there are a lot of misconceptions. So to clarify, as I said, these protests, because this is the first issue that is raised, these protests, they're not only due to the economic situation. Iran's society is on the brink of falling apart. There's an economic crisis, there's water shortage, there's energy shortage. People don't have electricity. Poverty is skyrocketing in Iran right now. I mean, every aspect of daily life that you look at, it's a disaster. So the people of Iran want change. They have learned one lesson, especially this younger generation. They say this a lot. They say, we might be alive, but we're not actually living. This is not a life what we have. And they've learned from their previous generations that because of the circumstances, families feared so much that they would lose their children to the atrocities of the regime, to execution and whatnot. They would safeguard them not to go into protest, not to be active. They're like, there's nothing to safeguard anymore. We have nothing to lose. At least, even if it means our lives, let's collectively do this and be able to give freedom to the next generation, to the youth right now, for them to be able to have a life, for them to be able to live and aspire and raise, and go forward in Iran. So that is the first misconception. I think it's really important to realize that people are in the streets for the overthrow of the regime. The second misconception is that the people of Iran, they're not in this for the long run. They understand that, as I said, no one's going to hand us freedom in a silver platter. They understand that this regime has learned its lessons from the Shah. They're not going to stop execution and torture till the last minute, because that will mean it's it will be fall apart that moment exactly. So they understand the price of coming to the streets. The third misunderstanding here is in regards to misconception, is in regards to the alternative. The reality on the ground speaks for itself. I think there are those who are, as I said, they have interests in having the return of the previous monarchy. But the reality is, I mean, you have to do the math. I mean, this person has been living a lavish life in the US for 47 years. And 47 years, he came to the US with millions and millions of dollars that his father took from Iran. And that's what he's been living off of. He has not worked a day in his life. He has no organizational structure. He has not been able to form one organization that lasts longer than 6 months. If you can't, I mean, how are you going to run a government if you don't have, some kind of a structure? The other thing is that he changes his talking points. I don't even want to say views, because I don't think it's views, it's talking points, on daily basis. I mean, with whatever he thinks is popular today. And there's, on one day he says, well, I rely on the same forces that are in the current regime, so the IRGC and the Basij and the suppressive forces, to build the future of Iran. These are the people who are killing our people on the streets, and that's who you are relying on. And we see that those surrounding him are actually, all of them are practically defectors of the regime who have come into his system. But I think it's more than, they're not defectors of the regime. I think they're more like infiltrators of the regime who are surrounding him. And till today, he had never given a plan. So about a few months ago, after 47 years, he decided to give out a plan for the future of Iran, because he felt like, the time has come. The people, the people and the regime are reaching a point that it's going to be overthrown soon. So in effort to hijack the whole movement, so he brought a plan. This plan, if you look at it, it's about 170 pages. It's available in English and Farsi. Anyone could go and read it. It is a blueprint to create a complete dictatorship. He says, I'm going to reinstate the Savak. He says, we're going to have, I'm going to come for 18 months, and then I have the right to extend it for another 5 years or whatnot. And so there's no checks and balances. Even some of the checks and balances that his father had, he has removed those too, because those are obstacles. Like, for instance, the Savak will be responding to him directly. Even during his father's time, the Savak was reporting back to the prime minister. So even that's been put aside. And then he is calling for creating a curfew throughout Iran for the next 20 months in all major cities. And like all these suppressive organs who are being reactivated. So the whole process, I mean, when you look at it, you're like, are you being serious? This is a catastrophe just wrapped in a beautiful, you could look at it with, rose tinted glasses, but that's not the reality on the ground. So that's his plan. And then on the other hand, I mean, a leader has to lead, right? He was on vacation till day 10 of the uprisings. He didn't cut his vacation short. He stayed there. And then he came and he comes and says, well, the people are coming to the streets. I mean, everyone has seen people are coming to the streets every night, and they come after dark. So it's like at 8 p.m. So these are givens, right? So he comes and says, well, the next 2 days, Thursday and Friday, come to the streets at 8 p.m. or stay in your houses and chant from your houses. The people are on the streets. They're giving their lives. The day he gave that message, 2 cities had been liberated already by the people who had disarmed the suppressive forces and forced them out of their cities. And you are here to hijack what they're doing and try to present it as, oh, I asked them to come to the streets and that's why they're in the streets. They were in the streets before you come and speak. And the reality is that, unfortunately, what's really irritating for Iranians and it's agitating a lot of people is the fact that how he tries to come and hijack, what they're doing and what they're, and he is someone who has, there's like plenty of quotes from him. First of all, he says, I'm not willing to sacrifice my personal freedoms for the freedom of the Iranian people. But now he's like, yeah, well, this is the price. This is a war, so they have to pay the price. The people of Iran have to die, but I shouldn't sacrifice even my vacation, right? That is not a leader. And the Iranian people, they have paid a grave price. And the reality is, for us, as the opposition movement, I don't think for any Iranian, really, any organization, this is not an issue of rivalry. It's the issue of he is a barrier in the path to the uprisings and of the revolution, because he is only creating distrust, disbelief, making people passive with the things that he's doing. And people, there are a lot of people who say, we don't want to pay the price and for someone else to come and hijack it. So he is a obstacle on the path of the Iranian people right now. It's not helping. And in fact, there was a very interesting analysis by the regime itself. I can send that to you later and you can use it maybe in your other shows or post it somewhere. There was analysis from within the regime itself in one of their state-run newspapers a few months ago. And it was an analysis of the 2022 uprisings and what has come about after that. And it said what helped us the most to be able to curb those protests and to stop the uprising at that point was the role played by Reza Pahlavi. So he was the element that helped the regime stay in power. And this is, this is really what we are seeing on the ground. So when Iranians are, one of the slogans that we do see in Iran is slogans like no to the crown and no to the turban, we want freedom and equality, or down with the oppressor, be it the Shah or the mullahs, and things of that nature. There are videos that are coming out, like for instance, that are saying Javid Shah or things like that too. But if you look at a lot of those scenes, you see that it's plainclothes agents who come in the crowd, give those chants to really actually divert attention. So like, for instance, you see, we have videos of it that you can see that people are chanting death to Khamenei, and then these people come and give these chants to divert attention from Khamenei to something else, right? They have been doing videos. Last week, we saw a lot of them on social media saying there's no need to say down with, death to Khamenei or death to the dictator, just concentrate on chanting in support of Pahlavi. So that's the message that they're trying to give, and that's what they're trying to do. And the reality is that the Iranian regime and the plainclothes agents are using that. Or for instance, there was a Telegram account that had published a guideline because Reza Pahlavi, actually a few months ago now, I think, he said it is time to reinforce or recreate the Guard de Javidan, the Eternal Guard, which was equivalent to the IRGC during the time of the Shah. It was actually the suppressive forces during the revolution. And so now they've made this telegram and it's giving directions to the Eternal Guards. And it says, when you go to protest, take knives and box cutters with you. So if anyone says any slogans that are opposed to the Shah, stop them. Well, I'm not saying that they actually did this, or it actually comes from their system, but the fact that when that is written, that provides a alibi, really, for the suppressive forces who are coming in the protest as plainclothes agents to make it look like, oh, it's the protesters killing each other. That's their internal fighting, things like that. So unfortunately, that is the role that he has played, and we're seeing that also in the demonstrations in the diaspora. People are being bullied and targeted and attacked by supporters of KAJ, which shows their true nature, their fascist nature that we're seeing. Unfortunately, they're targeting ethnic minorities, the Kurds, others, and we see them, with their chants targeting those who have been the main victim of the regime for 47 years. And unfortunately, that is something that we're seeing. And like, for instance, they are bringing flags of the Savak in protest. And even right now, they're making threats on social media. Tomorrow, once Iran is free, we're going to eliminate all of you. We're going to deal with you. We're going to have you eliminate, things of that nature. And they're not even in power yet, and they're doing this. So that's the issue. That's what people of Iran have an issue with. They don't have an issue with, we understand that not everyone's going to agree with one direction or one party or one way of thought. It's a diverse society, but enforcing your line this way, that is what we are opposed to. And that is a barrier in the path for the uprising in Iran. So that's why right now, if you go, I've seen, like, for instance, here in France, there is a hashtag that trended a few days during these uprisings. It's ni Shah ni Mullah, which means no to Shah, no to mullahs. And we see that even French lawmakers are using this. People who understand, what is the messaging behind this and where it's leading to. So I think it's really interesting to see analysts, lawmakers, people who understand the complex history behind Iran coming out and speaking in this regard.
Absolutely, absolutely. So many things happening on the ground. So, Zolal, I want to understand, the world is seeing this as news. Many are aware about it. But why should the young people, especially women, why should they care about the future of Iran?
Well, I think there's a beautiful Persian poem. It says that all human beings are part of one body. If one part of the body is hurt or in pain, everyone suffers. So I think that we are, as a collective, affected by one another. And I think that it is really important to support the youth of Iran, the women of Iran who are fighting oppression and dictatorship, because it does make an impact on us globally. And just imagine a free Iran and how it can flourish and how it can affect the whole world. Iran is right now, unfortunately, the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. Iran right now is the #1 country in executions in the world, with over 2,200 executions in 2025. And just imagine if Iran is actually a democracy. Right now, Iran has the highest brain drain in the world. Just imagine if those people could serve their own people or serve their country. Iran could become a country that helps in creating peace and stability, both in the region and the world. But I also think that it is on every one of us to help wherever we see people are fighting against tyranny and standing against it. We have that possibility historically to live in a time that there is such a issue that we can fight for. So I think that's really important. But also I think that the women in Iran and the women in the Iranian resistance have set a new precedent for women around the world. I think that one of the key elements that the Iranian resistance has touched on for the last 4 decades is women's empowerment and the importance in fighting the current dictatorship. So I think that with that comes the emancipation of both women and men. And so this can be a new start for generations to come. And also Iran, you have to understand, right now, Iran's population has doubled what it was in 1979. So it's a very young population. And really, these people need your support and your solidarity to be able to start a new chapter in their history. And I think that if we have that possibility, we shouldn't lose it, and we should be able to stand by the Iranian people and their organized resistance in these critical times.
Absolutely. So in a nutshell, what is it that you want to tell the world, want to tell everyone that you want to say?
Well, I think speaking today, I think every day our message is changing a bit just because of what is happening on the ground in Iran. But today, considering the massacre that is happening right now, as I said, this is the 3rd wave of massacre in Iran. And right now, it's a very decisive time. I think that we need to call for the international community to hold the regime accountable based on international jurisdiction, and to actually, like for instance, blacklist the IRGC, limit its effect and everything that it's doing, because it really does make a difference. It's time to shut down all of Iran's embassies and entities that they are affiliated with the regime abroad. It is time to also state clearly that we recognize the Iranian people's fight against this tyrannical regime. We recognize their right to resist and to defend themselves and to fight back. I think that's really critical during these times, and that is what we're asking for. For viewers who are tuning in, if you could use the possibility that you have. People in Iran don't have internet right now. They don't have a voice. But like, for instance, in India, there are plenty of people who can take to social media and be the voice of the Iranian people, share their messages, share their message that we stand in solidarity with the people of Iran in their fight against tyranny. We stand for a secular democratic republic in Iran. We are your voice, we hear you, we continue your path. I think that is the strongest message that we can give. Clarify to people that the people of Iran don't have to choose between 2 types of dictatorship. They can move forward to a democracy, a true republic in Iran. So that messaging could really help. Share the news, share the messages, double check your sources. A few sources that you can use are, there's the satellite television Simai Azadi, which has an English version too. You could find it on all social media platforms, which has up-to-date news, which is verified. And there's also like for instance on X, there's the English Mujahedin, so it's MOJAHEDINENG, that you could follow for the latest. There's also on Instagram, you can follow accounts like Iran Uprisings or Mayam Rajavi News for the latest. There's also the social media accounts of Mayam Rajavi, the president-elect of the Iranian resistance, that you can follow for the latest statements by the resistance and learn more about her. So yeah, if you could do that, we would greatly appreciate it. And also, there are a lot of demonstrations, rallies, protests in support of the Iranian people. Join if you would like to, form one in your own city, in your own province, or wherever you live in your own town. You can contact Iran Freedom at Action Center at iranfreedom.org. They can help you, provide you with material or anything that's needed for you to be able to do so. So every effort is greatly appreciated.
With this, we set up on this very special edition of the KAJ Politics Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining
Thank you very
us.
much for having me.